Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Factorio Space Exploration with me, your host, Captain Zisteau. So, the megabase has been designed and the megabase has been built. It's sitting here in all its glory, but it's got a lot of empty belts. All the pipes are empty, nothing is actually happening. Today, we need to establish some outposts on other planets that are going to bring in all the resources to make all the things. I have laid down some rail to prepare this step, and we're going to zoom through the first section where we set up some mining outposts on the planet, and these are going to be pretty straightforward, so let's get it over with. So after some frenetic construction robot activity, we've got outposts for all the different materials and all the different places we need to deliver them for the base. We may find out later that we need more outposts to deliver enough items to satisfy all the different machines, but for now, we've got at least one ore patch for each of these different stops, and it's enough to turn things on and get things going. I've also finished evicting the aliens from our island, as per the terms of the treaty. This time I didn't record any of it, but in case you were wondering how that went, please enjoy this dramatic recreation. Anyway, now that we've set up all these mining outposts on this planet, it's time to go to all the other planets and moons and asteroid belts and start accumulating all the weird resources that this mod pack has added. We are going to start on Morpheus, where we've already been, because we are going to need a ton of Vulcanite for our base. In fact, it's going to be turned into rocket fuel to fuel all of our future rockets and also our trains. So this is going to be a pretty important step. So we've got a rocket here fueled up and ready to go, and I've filled this container, or rather the robots have filled up this container with all kinds of stuff we're going to need for the outpost to build all the different things we're going to need. So real quick, I am going to load this stuff into the rocket because it's actually faster for me to do it than for the robots to do it. And then while we're away, they can be refilling it for the next outpost. And then I can just pick up this stuff, which I was already carrying around, and we can jump in the rocket and be on our way. So here we are on Morpheus, our source for Vulcanite, also our source for Iridite. We haven't been here in a very long time. We were still using delivery cannons and figuring out some basics of how the mod pack was going to work, how we were going to handle it, and this level of infrastructure is definitely not going to cut it. We're going to need to mine up a whole lot of Vulcanite. We're going to need a whole lot of Iridite, and to power all of that, because we're using these big mining drills that are very power hungry, we're going to need a lot of power, which means nuclear power, which means mining up uranium, which means creating sulfuric acid. So to get started, we're going to build some railroads. So now we've got some rail that's going to act as a spine for our operations on this planet. I also added an outpost for this uranium. We still need to make the sulfuric acid. And I identified the locations of some very limited amounts of iron ore, 12,000, and a whopping 17,000. There's really very little iron on this planet, but we don't need that much for nuclear power, so it should be okay. If we do need more later, we can always send in more via rocket. We need to create the sulfuric acid, and there's not much oil on this planet either, so we want this guy only making the sulfuric acid. So we're going to convert this steam power setup from running on solid fuel to running on Vulcanite blocks, since there's so much Vulcanite here. I've made a blueprint for converting the raw ore of Vulcanite into steam power. But since these are two different blueprints, I think the power poles are actually set up a little bit differently. If I plop this down, it's going to put down a lot of redundant power poles and maybe inserters too. So what I think I might do instead is make a duplicate of this blueprint. So we'll edit this one down to just the Vulcanite block part. Then we just fill in the gaps. Next, we're going to need a place for the trains on Morpheus to deliver the ore they're mining up here, the Vulcanite and the Iridite, and load it up into some rocket silos to be sent back to our home planet. I don't think I've actually made a blueprint for the train stations we're using for the megabase, so we can just do a little bit of copy pasting if we just zoom in on one. For the Iridite, I think this lower throughput train is going to be fine, so we'll just copy that like this. We might move things around once we get everything situated so that it lines up nicely and it connects down to the rail down to the south nicely. For the Vulcanite, we're going to need a lot more throughput, so we'll copy-paste this bigger train station that has double the offloading throughput, and I think we'll put 2 of those down. So let's just line this up vertically. Let's find, let's see, the train stop is right there. That seems to be lined up, and looks like that will work. And then we put down another one, something like that. And we'll also need some form of train stacker for extra trains to pile up behind the station while there's a train in the station. And we need all that to connect to our rail system. And after a fair little bit of tinkering, it looks like this. The trains can enter from either side, coming from the spine of the rail system we created. They can separate through to the different train stops. There's stackers behind each one. And if we have to expand this to hold more trains in the future, that's no big deal. We can totally do that. We have a smaller amount of throughput for the iridite, and then a whole bunch of throughput for all the vulcanite. And then when they're done, they basically go around the solar panels, which I decided not to move, and they can go back to the rail system, go get more ore. And now that we've done that, we can put down the next blueprint, the rocket silos, and we can make sure everything works and all that kind of stuff. And then we just have to do a little bit of adapting for the belts to line up. So just do something like that. That gets those to line up. We have to do something similar over here to get these to line up. Okay, I think that works. So we've got 5 different rocket silos loading in the usual manner with the circuit conditions so that they don't load too much of the rocket cargo sections or the space capsules. We've got 1 silo for iridite and then 4 for vulcanite, the raw ore. We're going to process it once it gets back to Nauvis. We've got 4 landing pads here. This one is just for me to show up and do whatever maintenance, whatever upgrades we have to do in the future. Zistau's space yacht landing pad is going to land there. Then we've got a landing pad delivering space capsules and a landing pad delivering cargo rocket section packed. And then we have an additional landing pad delivering rocket fuel to be converted into liquid rocket fuel to fuel up the rockets once they're built with the stuff. Each of these landing pads, every time a rocket shows up, there's going to be 1 recycled space capsule and a certain amount of recycled cargo rocket sections which are not packed. So we need to filter all those out of there. That's what this is right here. We will pull those directly out of the landing pad, and then we will pack them into packed sections, and we want these to get used up before all of the packed sections in this rocket pad. We want to make sure that these landing pads get emptied so that whenever we need more of whatever they're delivering, they're empty and ready to receive the next rocket. So all this belt stuff here is basically just making sure that we're using up the recycled space capsules and cargo rocket sections before we start using the space capsules we sent in bulk and the packed cargo rocket sections that we also sent in bulk. Of all the outposts we need to make, the outpost on Morpheus is going to be the biggest and the most active. Is going to need the most power. It's actually a bigger planet than Nauvis, our home planet. And since it has this nice, big, convenient lake, what we're going to do is we're going to do a smaller version of what we did on Nauvis. We're going to build nuclear power on the water. So I built a train stop to deliver the iron ore and the uranium ore. I also brought some uranium-235, the bright green stuff, to jumpstart the production of our uranium fuel cells. And they are going down the line. We've produced some, and the reactors are heating up. The heat pipes are distributing the heat. They have warmed up enough to turn the water into steam, so we have much more power than we had a little bit ago. So we can start working on the vulcanite and the iridite mining outposts, deliver those to our stop just below. There's a train with uranium just showing up. We're also making sulfuric acid so that we can mine up that uranium. Since we converted our steam power away from the solid fuel, we can use that oil specifically just for the sulfuric acid. And since we have a whole bunch of vulcanite here, we don't need to deliver an entire rocket full of rocket fuel. We can just make it locally. This is one of the things we can do on this planet. Not all the different outpost planets will be able to do that, but here we can. So we've got a build taking the raw ore and crushing it and washing it, turning it into blocks, and then the blocks get turned into rocket fuel. And so those are fueling up our rocket silos. And you know what? While we're at it, let's add some more nuclear power. Why not? So we're just about finished up building our outpost on Morpheus. Last thing to do is to turn on the trains that are going to deliver the Vulcanite. The Iridite trains have already been turned on and they've already delivered their payload. So we just need to turn these on, make sure everything is working properly. They're going to the right destination, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll be out of here and hopefully won't have to come back for some time. And there you have it. We've got ore getting loaded onto the cargo rocket, although it's not actually getting inserted because the rocket isn't built yet, which is the whole point of this signal here, so that it doesn't fill up, blocking the cargo rocket sections and the space capsule from having space to be added to the thing to build the rocket to begin with. And I think that's pretty much the last thing we need to do on this planet. If we need to do anything else, we can have some robots do it for us. I've left some construction robots in the roboports. So, time to get out of here. So we're back on Nauvis now at the edge of our base where our cargo rocket silos are. We've got 2 rockets ready to go. This one is full of cargo rocket section packed, a whole bunch of them, 500 in fact, exactly. And then this rocket is somewhat full, or not even close to full, but it's got some space capsules in it. These things are pretty expensive to make, so even though my starter base has been making them periodically as we're doing other things, it's still not full because these are pretty expensive at this point. But this is more than we really need to send to the outpost immediately. So what I'll probably do is take some more of these out of here to reserve for the other outposts. As our mega base gets up and running, they should be a little bit easier to make. And they are 100% recycled every single time we send a rocket. So over time they are just going to accumulate and we'll have enough eventually. But before we send these rockets, I noticed a design flaw in the rocket silo layout that we left on Morpheus. So we need to fix that. Let's run over here. This is where I designed the thing to begin with. So this is the prototype, I guess. Actually, this thing was the original prototype when I originally thought we would only need 1 cargo rocket silo per outpost before I realized that Morpheus we would need more. Some of the outposts can use this one, I guess, but Morpheus needed more. Anyway, you may also notice that I've put some landfill in the landing pads. When a landing pad has something in it, it prevents a rocket from sending stuff to that landing pad. So by putting something random in these landing pads, I've just made sure that our cargo rockets don't accidentally shoot off to this location. This one doesn't have one, does it? But that's my space yacht location, so we don't have any automated rockets going to that one, or we're not going to anyway. Anyway, this is the landing pad that's going to receive all the space capsules. Let's see what happens when we put some in there. They get put on the belt, and they get prioritized. The ones that are getting recycled get prioritized over the bulk delivered ones, and each silo is going to take exactly 1. That part is working fine. All the stuff with the red wire, making sure that the silos only take what they need, that stuff works just fine. Let's see, is the landing pad done? Did it get rid of them? Okay, it emptied everything out except this bit of landfill that's there on purpose. So let's say this rocket has its space capsule. Let's say it also has the rocket sections and the rocket fuel, and it filled up with Vulcanite and it launched and it went back to our base to supply our base with Vulcanite. And then it wants to build a new rocket. It's going to need a space capsule, except all the space capsules are way down here at the end of the belt, doing nothing. So this is a little bit of a problem. We've got a fairly long section of belt. We've got some very hard to produce items, so we need to make it so that the items don't end up on the belt where they can't get used. One thing we could do is we could hook these up with green wire. We've been using red wire for the individual silos, so we can use green wire to do some signal stuff that takes into account all the different rocket silos. And if I put a power pole down here, and if you shift click, by the way, a power pole, it'll get rid of the copper wire. So we do that, and then I connect it to that silo. It'll show us some signals. I don't know what these I and E signals are. 251,000 I, or L maybe? 2.5 thousand E. That might be talking about like the amount of liquid rocket fuel it needs. I'm not exactly sure. But the thing to take note of is that it's telling us that there are 5 space capsules in these silos that we've networked together. So that's useful. If we create a buffer chest, we collect all the space capsules that are being collected from these different landing pads. We can put down a filter inserter and then we wire it up to the green wire collection of things we've wired together with green wire. And we tell it to set filters. You can see that it goes immediately to letting the space capsules through because the signal here has space capsules, so it's going to let the space capsules through. And this is an instance where we may want to invert the signal. Let me get rid of that for a second. So we're going to take the space capsule signal and we're going to multiply it by -1 and then output that signal again. Okay, let me find my green wire. And then we're going to need another filter inserter because I picked mine up. There we go. Okay, and set that again to set filters. So it's no longer letting the space capsule through because we have a negative number. But what we can do is use a constant combinator, and we can give it a signal of 1 space capsule for every silo we have. We have 5 silos. We'll give it 5 space capsules. And these 2 signals will cancel out. So this guy is no longer going to allow the space capsules onto the belt because it's no longer receiving a signal that there is a space capsule missing in this group. Unfortunately, it's only going to update the signal once all 5 of these have their space capsule, and meanwhile, the belt is going to be populated with the space capsule, so we haven't really done anything useful yet. So what we could do is connect all of these belts together with the green wire. We set it to read belt contents and hold, and then we copy-paste the signal all the way down. And we also need to network it with the other collection of green wire. And that way the belt would be included in the grouping to let us know if there were 5 space capsules out on the belt. So to test this idea out, I've reset all the different silos. I picked them up to get the space capsules back. I put them back down and reset all the wire. So all of these belts and the 5 different silos are connected together with green wire, and that signal is going to this arithmetic combinator here. We're inverting the signal. That's getting combined with the constant combinator, which is sending a signal of 5 space capsules. And then that signal is going to this filter inserter with set filters enabled. Currently, the filter is there because the only signal is from the constant combinator outputting this signal. Here's our little reference power pole to tell us what signal we're getting. So when I dump the space capsules back into the system, what I hope to happen is that as soon as there's 5 space capsules on this belt, the filter disappears and it doesn't let any more on. And that won't change once they're inserted. Actually, when it goes from the belt to the silo, that might cause a little bit of a hiccup, but let's see what happens. We can dump all these guys in here and actually give me a few back to put in the other silos, or landing pads rather. Okay, oh, did they already go? It was too fast. Did the last one get loaded on? There it goes. Okay, so there was, turns out, I think 1 extra space capsule ended up on the belt. I'm assuming from the hiccup of when the inserter was swinging, when it was in between the belt and the silo. But still, that's a lot less bulk. One thing that kind of bugs me about this kind of system is having this entire belt wired up at the same time, constantly getting monitored. So what we might try to do is to make this a little bit more compact. So just by rearranging things a little bit, we could get rid of a lot of this belt that is currently being monitored. We could put this over here, like that. And that would cut the belt distance down by a lot. By the way, we're doing all of this because there's a thing in this game called robot attrition. Different planets have different amounts of robot interference wind, and if you have logistics robots flying around, they'll occasionally crash and explode based on this rating. So Nalvis, our home planet, has a rating of 1, so almost no crashes there. But some of our outposts are going to have more. Morpheus has a robot interference win of 10.9, so that seems pretty high. Looking at the Space Exploration Wiki, it says robot attrition provides challenge for players to explore other builds than bot bases. It says only logistics robots are affected. That's pretty good. Only networks with greater than 50 active robots will be affected. Oh, that means we don't have to do any of this crap. Okay, so new plan. We're going to deliver the space capsules with logistics robots. There should only be 1 or 2 robots ever active at any given time, so we don't need to put those on the belt at all. The cargo rocket sections can go on the belt. That's no big deal, because those are much easier to produce in high numbers. I also modified the fueling a bit. We've got more fuel refineries so we can fuel things up faster. So when one of these silos needs fuel, it can draw from the output of all these different fuel refineries instead of just 1 or 2 at a time. Now what I have to do, we've got to update this. And it's done. Okay, so finally, let's get this show on the road. I would like you to go to any landing pad with name Packed Rocket Section Pad. It's going to look for literally any landing pad that I've placed anywhere in the game, on any planet or whatever, that has that name, that doesn't have anything in it. And currently there should be only one. And same thing with this one, any landing pad with name Space Capsule Pad. And we're going to manually launch this because it's not going to be full, but that's fine. That's plenty of space capsules. So the rockets are ready to send, but they're not going anywhere because the landing pad that has the name they want to launch to has something in it. So let's get this stuff out of the way and let's get this thing going. The Vulcanite is going to make all the rocket fuel for the base, going to fuel all of our rockets and all of our trains. So that's an important first step for bringing the mega base online. We go back to here. Yeah, they're already launching. There they go. 1, 2, 3. Now this is probably going to be pretty slow because this whole base design is based around having modules of rank 7, so productivity rank 7 and speed rank 7, as well as having the big area beacons, which we're not going to have for a long time, and those things can hold 20 different modules at a time. So I think what we'll do for now is just try to put some of these around. Oops, I turned my roverboard off. Try to put some of these around to speed this up a little bit until we unlock at least the first wide area beacon. We might do something like that. And that. And there we go. We've got rocket fuel in the base, fueling up all the different rockets. Although now that I'm looking at it, I think I might do a slight redesign of the fueling structure here and have it be more like this. I think this was a good idea. Have all of the fuel refineries go into one chain of tanks and then have the fuel disperse out from there. The tanks can spread laterally and then go vertically to go to individual rocket silos. Here's the most compact. I got that other design before I realized it was totally pointless, by the way. So we've got rocket fuel fueling up our rockets. We've also got rocket fuel going around the perimeter of the base, and this is going to give fuel for all of our trains. And it should fuel the ones in the stations automatically. I'll have to pick up some rocket fuel and dump it in the ones in the stackers just so that those have a little bit to get going. But I think that is about the end of this episode. That's right, we're done. We're finished. Next episode, we're going to go do the rest of the outposts on the different planets. We're going to turn on all these trains, have them go out to the different outposts, and we're going to put stuff on all these belts. That's right. That's it. I'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day. Bye-bye.